My name is Lenore Braford. I am the founder and animal care director at Piedmont Farm Animal Refuge. I went vegan in 2007, and the reason was I was in college as an environmental studies major. I started to learn about the factory farming industry and really think about animals in our food system for the first time. I was primarily learning about it from an environmental lens, but being somebody with a heart who cared about animals, I was appalled to learn how these animals were being treated, and that led me to become vegan. When people find out that I'm vegan, they will sometimes ask about what kinds of things I eat. Like they may only be thinking about vegetables and not thinking about all the other types of food that I do like to eat. Ask like if it's difficult. Sometimes they ask me why, which is great because I can talk to them about some of the issues that animals face. Since becoming vegan, I think the biggest thing for me is just the personal kind of feeling of satisfaction that I'm making choices that fall within like my own ethics and morals. I was vegan for around 6 years before starting the refuge. And so I think initially taking that step was enough for me. And then I kind of realized that in addition to just being vegan myself, there were so many people out there that do love animals and just need to be given the opportunity to meet them and learn their stories. And so that motivated me to do even more. And so now, living a life at the sanctuary, I feel very fulfilled in terms of how I spend my time and hopefully making a difference for animals. When I first went vegan, I remember that I felt a lot more energy than I used to. Yeah, I guess just more energy in my body is the main thing. When I first went vegan, I was doing it for animals, and I still am, but now, since founding the refuge and working with these animals on a daily basis, I have firsthand intimate knowledge of individual animals, and I know what their life was like before they came. I know what their life would have been if they had not been rescued. So I feel a much more personal connection to that. And that helps me when I'm speaking to others because I can really speak from the heart about these animals who are truly my friends.
So it's still predominantly all about the animals for you?
For me, it is.
Why do you think it's important for other people to be vegan? Sometimes we hear people say, what does it matter what I do, to each his own?
Every choice that we make, even as one person, can have a large impact. So when you go to the grocery store and you buy certain things, you are condoning those practices with your dollar. And those small choices actually add up to making a huge difference. When I first went vegan, there were hardly any options in terms of let's say plant milks. Now there's dozens of different plant milks. You can find plant milks at almost any store. So these choices that we make actually do add up and make an impact on the world. In addition, if you become vegan, then it's going to become known to anybody that you interact with in life, whether it's your personal friends or family or just people that you happen to meet. And so the power that you have as an individual to then influence others is something that can't be understated as well.
How do you encourage others to be vegan?
Primarily, when I'm talking to others about becoming vegan, I have found that at the refuge, meeting animals and learning their stories and seeing them face to face is one of the most effective things we can do, because we grew up in a culture where we're very separated from the animals that are in the grocery store. We'll go to the store and they'll just be body parts wrapped in plastic, and there's no association with who or what that animal was. So when people are confronted face to face with a turkey who's trying to sit in their lap, or, a sheep who wants to snuggle with them and starts to learn that these animals would have been the food that they eat, it's making some of those connections for the first time, but it's also putting that individual front and center so that they can't ignore and they can't look away. And so that is extremely powerful. And I've witnessed many times people saying, well, I'll never eat meat again, I'll never eat turkeys again, because of those animals' ability to just be themselves and be present and share that.
And what kind of challenges have you had?
Yeah, I guess I feel like I've been pretty fortunate. When I first went vegan, I was at a college that had a lot of options in the dining hall, and there were a lot of other people that were, vegetarian or vegan. So it didn't seem like I was in a community that was super against it. With my family, in the beginning, I definitely got a lot of pushback in terms of this is not going to be healthy for you, and where are you going to get your protein and all these different things. And I think they originally thought this was sort of just a phase I was going through at that time in my life, the age that I was and everything. But now that it's been so long, I feel very supported by my family, and it's really, being vegan isn't something that I think about. It's just part of my life and part of who I am.
Now, this is kind of a funny question because, people, I get comments on YouTube and sometimes I'm just like, where did people come up with these ideas? But do you have more or less dental problems as a vegan?
I don't think I could connect my dental health with veganism. I mean, obviously when I was not vegan, I was much younger than I am now. So yeah, I don't personally see any connection there.
So how has being vegan affected your relationships, like intimate relationships?
I am pretty lucky that my partner Paul became vegan very shortly after I did. So that's been something really important to me over time, to have that support and to be on the same page with somebody that you are so close with, emotionally, physically, you're sharing a home. There have been people, extended family members that can be confrontational from time to time. But I feel like I've learned from those experiences, and I've learned how to better talk to people when they are feeling threatened or confronted in a way that's more successful. So I feel like sometimes those experiences with people that you're close to who are not vegan can be really difficult to go through. It's something that I've learned and grown from over time. Honestly, most of my close friends and family, they respect me. If they're not vegan themselves, then at this point they understand why I do what I do, especially with the refuge. They respect that, and it's not really an issue that comes up for us.
Could you be with somebody who isn't vegan?
You mean like in a romantic relationship?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been put in that situation, so it's hard for me to be able to imagine that. I aspire to be someone who is compassionate and understanding of others. So I would hope that if I was ever in that situation, I would try to be open about it and hope that that person would come to it on their own, but I'm not sure. I might not be that way.
How do you deal with other family members that are not vegan during the holidays?
Yeah, we had some conversations with family members about this a number of years ago, when I think particularly we were, coming to know individual animals, turkeys and other animals so intimately that it was a different scenario than it was personally for me before. And we're definitely met with some resistance, and that's, some of those confrontations that I've had in the past, but feel very lucky that, this has been accepted as, we're not going to be having a holiday meal that includes, a turkey, a chicken, whoever it may be, but instead having some other options. So I feel very fortunate in that regard.
So like, how do you deal with it though? Like,
We essentially said that we were uncomfortable with a celebration that included, a dead animal on the table, and that it was something that was bothersome to us at a time when you're trying to, relax and have a good time with family. And so it doesn't happen anymore.
so you basically set limits and stood by them. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. How might life be different if you were raised vegan?
If I was raised vegan, then maybe I wouldn't have felt as compelled to do the work I'm doing with the refuge, because it would have been more of just normal life, and I maybe wouldn't have realized that so many other people, like family and close friends, were not on that same page and see the opportunity for change, and have gone through that change myself and realized how I could be effective in helping shift others to veganism. So I may not have started the sanctuary at all. That's something that comes to mind.
That's interesting. I wonder about that too. Like with some sanctuaries, like, is it a way of overcompensating for all the damage you've done?
Right.
Do you ever wish you were raised vegan?
I mean, I think for most people who are vegan, it's like we look back and it's like, well, it'd be great if we had been vegan earlier. If everybody was vegan today, like that would be great. So from that perspective, yes. But I can't really comment on a life that is not my own personal journey. So I'm satisfied with where my life has taken me so far.
Do you have any regrets?
Oh, I have lots of regrets. But yeah, I think, mostly it's just when, thinking about starting a farmed animal sanctuary, I spent 5 years researching and learning and working at other sanctuaries before starting the refuge. But still, there was so much to learn and to know, not only, on the ground details, but personally, emotionally, like what it would take to do this. And so I think I don't have any regrets, but I'm certainly have learned a huge amount about myself through the process of, being vegan and then starting the refuge, that I may not have had the opportunity to delve into if I hadn't pushed myself to do this work.
Why didn't you go vegan sooner?
I would have been vegan earlier, but I was not actually aware, and I'd never thought of the animals that we think of as food. They just didn't really occur to me in terms of where they were, what kind of conditions they were living in. Just didn't really think about them, which I think is pretty standard in our culture. So if I had been exposed to something even younger that gave me a glimpse into what that was like, then I probably would have been vegan then.
Prior to going vegan, was there ever a time where you felt like, there's no way I could do that?
I wasn't actually that familiar with the term vegan. I didn't know anybody that was vegan. I was vegetarian for a couple years beforehand, simply because I had moved out of the house, never really liked meat, and I was just happy to do that in college and just avoid eating meat. But it was really the deeper understanding and studying through school that made me realize what it was to be vegan and why that was important. There was actually a specific class I took, an environmental philosophy class, where I was given the assignment to debate that it was ethical to eat animals and their products. And so I was forced to try to come up with moral arguments as to why that was something that was acceptable. So that was something I wish everybody could engage in, because essentially I turned myself into a vegan after trying to go through all the arguments, realizing there were none. So I really thank my professor for having that class and having those kinds of discussions. And in fact, one of the ducks here at the refuge is named Professor Tim in his honor.
Do you ever worry about any specific nutrients?
I try to eat as healthy as I can. I don't always eat super healthy as a vegan. I think about B12 sometimes, which is something that's talked about. But there's B12 that can be found in so many different places. So it's not really something that I stress or worry about on a daily basis. And when I have been to the doctor recently, I ask them to run different checks and levels on my nutrient balance just to make sure. And I've never had a problem with anything like that in all my years of being vegan. So it's not really something that I think about regularly.
Do you take supplements?
I do take a B12 supplement sometimes.
Did you acquire any ailments after becoming vegan?
No.
How do you suggest other people get started going vegan, or do you have any tips?
I think that if you are aspiring to be vegan and you're not now, you are living in a wonderful time of plenty in terms of foods that can help you transition. So taking something like milk and then going out there and finding what your favorite plant milk is, and then you're good to go there, moving on to the next thing. That way you are not overwhelmed and feel like it's something you can't sustain over time. And also I would suggest, talking to other people, if you know vegans, or if you can find some local groups or even online groups. People really want to help each other figure out, oh, I'm struggling with this issue. Don't let that hold you back, because there are people out there that have struggled with that and they want to help you find those solutions that they did.
Can you list for me some resources that people might like to check out, or that you think would be good for them?
I'm not good at that. not on the spot. This vegan library right here is full of resources. My favorite cookbook is one called Isa Does It, which is a vegan cookbook, but it's just got really good recipes that anybody would love. So that's one of my favorite resources.
Why do you think some people quit veganism, and how might they be able to prevent or best resolve those reasons?
Well, I think there's probably a lot of reasons that people might become vegan and then not stick with it, or kind of fluctuate between vegan and being not vegan. I think everybody is different. Everybody's on their own journey. But I think personally, for me, having it be directly connected to animals has been something that I would never waver on. I feel like if I did not know about the animals and I was doing it for my own health, which is a very legitimate reason to be vegan. With health stuff and diet, people tend to kind of oh well, I'm gonna not think about that today. But when it's for animals, it's you know exactly what you're contributing to, and you don't ever want to cause harm again. And most of us are like that. We like animals. We don't like factory farming, but we're just doing these things that are just in our culture normalized, and we're just not thinking about what we're doing. But if we started to think about it and put two and two together, we would not want to engage in that.
Do you have any success stories you'd like to share?
One of the best tours that I ever have given at the refuge was way in the beginning when we first started. And we had a group of hens who had come from California. They had lived in an egg warehouse for the first 2.5 years of their lives and had gone through terrible conditions. And instead of being sent to slaughter, they had been put on an airplane and sent to the East Coast to go to sanctuaries up and down the coast. And so some of them came to us. And on this tour, we had recently lost one of the hens to reproductive disease. And I started to talk to these people about the hens and about this individual named Fireball. And I just lost it. I just started crying. And it was my honest feelings, telling her story, talking about what she had been through, talking about how much she meant to us. And those people emailed me, I can't remember, a couple days later, a week later, and said, we're vegan now, and, we're doing it for Fireball. And so that's not a situation you can always duplicate, but I think when you're able to speak from the heart and just tell the truth, then people are really moved.
Is there anything about vegans that you wish you could change?
I try not to judge other people. I think if we were just all as welcoming and as compassionate towards everyone we meet as possible, that could only be a good thing for the animals. So I would encourage that.
Do you think we'll ever see a vegan world, and how can we get there?
I definitely am an optimist. So, the reason I'm doing the work that I'm doing is that I do believe that people change and that the culture and society is changing. So, yeah, I think a vegan world is definitely possible. I hope that it happens sooner rather than later. But I think the main thing that needs to happen is that people just need to be more connected and more aware of these animals' lives, what their choices can do in terms of affecting a better world for everyone.
What do you think a vegan world would look like?
Well, there's a lot of things about human nature I could be pessimistic about, but hopefully there would be a lot more green spaces, garden spaces. Hopefully there would be a lot less suffering in the world, both for animals and for humans.
What foods do you try to eat every day, like routine foods like breakfast, lunch, dinner?
Yeah, I like to have oatmeal in the morning with different fruits or nuts mixed in. For lunch, I'm often having sort of leftovers from dinner before, or some kind of wrap, like veggie wrap, falafel wrap, something I can get from town on the go because I'm usually pretty busy. And then for dinner, I really do like cooking quite a bit, and I like variety. I get bored easily. I don't like to eat the same thing over and over again. So, I'll just find a recipe either online or from a favorite cookbook to make. Some things that I've made recently, I made some really good oatmeal raisin cookies I shared with my family who's not vegan. They love them. Just lots of veggies and grains, and I love pizza, so that we have some really good vegan pizza in the area that I'll splurge on.
Is there categories like beans and greens and grains and fruits and mushrooms? And do you try to get those on a regular basis?
I don't pay attention to my diet to that degree. I will eat things that I like. I will make recipes that I like. Seasonally, in the summer, I tend to make a lot of smoothies with a bunch of fruits and oat milk and hemp seeds and things like that. In the winter, I tend to like warmer foods like oatmeal, but I don't really count my, I've had this number of portions of beans or grains any particular day. It's just something that works out through, my love of food and variety.
How much of your diet do you think is raw?
Ooh, definitely in the winter, not that much. I definitely eat more raw veggies and fruits and things like that in the warmer months, because it's just what my body wants. In the winter, right now, I tend to be eating more soups and stews and warm meals like that.
Do you think you'll ever eat lab-grown meat?
Lab-grown meat is an interesting thing. I personally don't really, when I was young, I did not have an affinity for eating meat. In fact, I refused to eat a lot of types of meat because I thought it was gross. So I'm not one of those people that is ooh, I really remember those flavors and textures and I'd like to revisit that, because I never really ate them to begin with. So for me, it's not something that's important personally. So probably not.
What about mock meats?
Yeah, I sometimes eat mock meats, like vegan chicken stuff. So yeah, sometimes that can be something that you're trying to replicate, like a favorite family recipe. For me, my mother's side is Ukrainian, so cheese and potato pierogies was something that was important to my heritage and to my family gatherings. When somebody's birthday, we'll just have pierogies, or even for the holidays. So figuring out how to veganize those, honestly, my mother did the work there, and it's not really an issue. But yeah, I enjoy eating mock meats or like vegan versions of cheese or milk in certain circumstances.
What do you think about people going on these like meat-based diets, like paleo, keto, carnivore?
Yeah. Well, I try not to judge people too much. And I'm sure they may have gotten information where they feel like they're doing something good for their body or whatever. That's, to me, seems not good for many reasons. Obviously, for the animals, I would say for their own health. There's a lot of studies that show that a lot of meat eating, and particularly certain types of meat, are not great for you in large quantities. And then, of course, the environmental impact of that is not so great as well. So I wouldn't encourage it. And yeah, I'm not going to like be super judgy.
If your doctor said you had to eat animals, what would you do?
I would probably find another doctor, because there are many doctors that recognize that veganism is completely healthy and normal for everyone. I've never personally had that problem, but I do always share that with my physician. And they're usually like, good for you. So,
If you weren't doing this form of activism, the sanctuary here, if you weren't doing that, what would you be doing instead?
relaxing, traveling, taking care of myself, those things come to mind. It's, this type of work is very all-encompassing in terms of it's physical, it's emotional, and these animals require care when they require it. So there'll be some days when I had a whole plan for the day and somebody's got to have an emergency vet visit, and that's what I'm now doing for the next 4 hours. So I'm looking forward to, passing it along and being, retired, or at least taking a break at some time in the future.
And have you ever been inside of a slaughterhouse or a CAFO?
I've never been inside a slaughterhouse. I have been inside some CAFOs and some of these, what are they called? It's like the place where they're auctioned off and they're waiting in the stalls. So it's like slaughter auctions or other animal auction facilities. Yeah, I've been inside several of those.
What was that like?
I remember specifically being at this location where there were a number of types of animals who were waiting to be auctioned off. And I saw these pigs there. And I had just been in the presence of pigs who were at a sanctuary. And the difference between the two, I remember being something very striking that, I remember now, and it's been many, many years. And one of the things was the look in their eyes. The pigs at this auction had just given up on life and hope, and they just had this empty look of despair in their eyes. And it was such a contrast to the joyful pigs that I had seen at a sanctuary who were just living their lives. So that's something that I think will always stay with me.
Tell me real quick to wrap this up about your sanctuary, the name of it, the location, how many animals you got, and how others can find out more about it.
Yeah. So Piedmont Farm Animal Refuge, we're located in central North Carolina, in Pittsboro. We have around 120 rescued animal residents, including goats and sheep, chickens and turkeys, and ducks and geese. And right now we are finishing up building a space for cows. We are open for public tours, and we do a lot of outreach in the community in terms of vegan cooking classes, bake sales, free sampling. In order to get involved with us, you can learn more on our social media pages or connect with us on our website, which is piedmontrefuge.org.